Oh, you are all so strong.
Only for you, my lady.
Higher! Don't let me fall!
We have you safe.
When you hear the word harem, what comes to mind? Probably a grand palace filled with beautiful women, all dedicated to a powerful emperor, right? It's a classic image, seen in movies and history books. But what if I told you history has a fascinating twist on this story? A tale where the roles were completely reversed, where a woman held all the power and kept a harem of men. This isn't a fantasy novel. This is the real, and rather shocking, story of Wu Zetian, the one and only female emperor in the entire history of China. Her life reads like an epic drama, a story fueled by ambition, sharp intelligence, and a healthy dose of controversy. Imagine climbing from a concubine's chamber to the dragon throne itself, a feat no woman had ever achieved before or since. Wu Zetian didn't just break the rules, she rewrote them. She declared her own dynasty, the Zhou, and ruled over one of the world's most powerful empires. But as her power grew, so did the whispers and rumors that echoed through the Forbidden City. And the most scandalous of all were the stories about her private life, and specifically, her male harem. Behind the shimmering golden walls and intricate silk screens of the palace, a very different kind of court was being held. The stories that trickled out described a world of opulence and pleasure, but also one of constant fear and silent suffering. These men, often chosen for their good looks, wit, and talents, were brought into the Empress's inner circle. They were known as the Kung Herfu, or the Office of Crane Control, a poetic name for a not-so-poetic reality. On the surface, life in Wu Zetian's harem was a dream. These men were showered with riches, wore the finest silks, and enjoyed a level of comfort most people could only imagine. They were players in the ultimate game of courtly life, living in luxury at the very center of power. They had access to the Empress, a position that brought with it immense influence. But this privilege came at a very steep price. Every single day was a performance. Every smile had to be perfect, every word carefully chosen, every action meticulously planned. They lived under the constant, watchful eye of the Empress and her network of spies. This wasn't just about romantic companionship. For Wu Zetian, the male harem was a symbol of her absolute authority. If male emperors could have countless concubines, why couldn't she, the emperor, have male companions? It was a bold statement of equality, or rather, a declaration of her supremacy. The men were pawns in her political chess game. She used them to consolidate her power, to reward loyalty, and to intimidate her rivals. A favored companion could see his family rise to nobility overnight, but falling out of favor could mean a swift and silent disappearance. The line between pleasure and peril was razor. The most famous of her companions were two brothers, Zhang Yizi and Zhang Changzhong. They were said to be incredibly handsome and skilled in the arts, and they captured the Empress's attention in her later years. She doted on them, granting them titles, wealth, and unprecedented access to the court. They became so powerful that even the highest-ranking officials had to bow to them, but their arrogance grew with their influence, and they made many enemies. They were a constant source of scandal, and their story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that came with being one of Wu Zetian's favorites. Their lives were luxurious, but they were also built on a foundation of sand, entirely dependent on the whims of one powerful woman. So, while we often imagine harems as places of romance and luxury, the story of Wu Zetian's male harem reveals a much darker, more complex reality. It was a golden cage, a place where men traded their freedom for a life of precarious privilege. It was a world of intrigue, where every move could be your last, and where the Empress's favor was the only thing that stood between life and death. Wu Zetian's reign remains one of the most debated periods in Chinese history, a testament to a woman who dared to seize ultimate power and live by her own rules, both in public and in private. Her story forces us to look beyond the myths and see the human drama that often. To truly understand this story, we first need to pull back the curtain on royal life in ancient China. Imagine a world where one man, the emperor, was seen as the son of heaven. His word was law, his power absolute. This wasn't just a political title. It was a divine mandate that shaped every single aspect of life. The palace, known as the Forbidden City, wasn't just a home. It was a universe unto itself, a sprawling labyrinth of courtyards, halls, and hidden chambers. It was a world governed by an intricate web of rules, rituals, and unspoken secrets. Every bow, every glance, every word spoken or left unsaid was loaded with meaning. Inside its massive walls lived thousands of people. Eunuchs who managed the daily operations, elite guards sworn to protect the emperor, with their lives high-ranking officials who advised him on matters of state, and of course, the women of the imperial court. Everyone, from the lowest-ranking servant to the most powerful minister, had a specific place in a rigid hierarchy. Think of it like a giant, complex chessboard where every person was a piece, and the stakes were incredibly high. A single misstep, a poorly chosen word, or a perceived slight could cost you everything: your position, your family, even your life. In this high-pressure environment, loyalty to the emperor and the throne was valued far more than personal feelings like love or friendship. Often, the smartest move was to stay silent, to observe and listen, because speaking the truth could be a dangerous gamble. Survival depended on navigating the treacherous currents of court politics with extreme caution and intelligence. Now, let's talk about a central and often misunderstood part of palace life: the imperial harem. Traditionally, male emperors maintained a large harem of women. This wasn't just about personal desire. It was a critical function of the state. The primary duty of the harem was to produce heirs, ensuring the continuation of the dynasty. A strong line of succession was vital for the stability of the entire empire. Marriages were also a powerful political tool. The emperor would take daughters of influential families or foreign rulers as concubines to forge alliances, secure loyalty, and consolidate his power. Each woman brought with her the influence and backing of her family, adding another layer to the court's political landscape. For the women who lived within the harem, life was a gilded cage. They were surrounded by unimaginable luxury, exquisite silks, precious jewels, and the finest foods, but they had virtually no freedom. Their lives were governed by strict rules and ancient traditions. They rarely, if ever, left the confines of the inner palace. Their entire existence revolved around one person: the emperor. Gaining his favor was the ultimate goal, as it meant not just personal security and status, but also power and influence for their families. The competition for the emperor's attention was fierce and relentless. The women were ranked in a strict hierarchy, from the empress at the very top, down to various ranks of consorts and concubines. Moving up this ladder was the only way to improve one's standing. This created a hotbed of jealousy, rivalry, and intrigue. Alliances would form and break in the blink of an eye. While some women formed genuine friendships, many saw each other as rivals in a lifelong competition for survival and influence. Their lives were a constant balancing act of charm, wit, and political maneuvering. So, as we delve deeper into our story, remember this context. The palace was not a fairy tale castle. It was a complex, self-contained world where power was everything. Survival was an art form, and every individual, no matter their rank, was playing a high-stakes game. The decisions made within those walls didn't just... Have you ever heard of a woman who went from being a minor concubine to ruling one of the most powerful empires in history? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor of China. Her journey from the shadows of the imperial court to the dragon throne is a masterclass in ambition, intelligence, and survival. Let's rewind the clock to the 10th dynasty, a golden age of Chinese history, and uncover how a young girl named Wu Zhao began her extraordinary ascent. Wu Zetian was born in the year 624 into a wealthy and influential family. Her father was a high-ranking official, which meant she received an education that most girls of her time could only dream of. She learned to read, write, and was even taught about politics and history. From a young age, she wasn't just another pretty face. She was sharp, confident, and had a spark of ambition that set her apart. She wasn't content with the traditional path laid out for women. She saw the world of power and wanted in. Her big break, or so it seemed, came when she was just 14 years old. Her beauty and intelligence caught the attention of Emperor Taizong, one of China's most revered rulers. She was selected to enter the imperial palace as a Chiron, a concubine of the 5th rank. Now, you might think this was a glamorous life, but the reality was brutal. The Forbidden City was a gilded cage, home to thousands of women all vying for a single man's attention: the emperor. It was a world of fierce competition, jealousy, and intricate political maneuvering. A single misstep could mean obscurity, or worse, For Wu Zetian, this was a harsh but invaluable school. She was a junior concubine and didn't initially capture the emperor's deep affection. Instead of despairing, she observed. She watched how the senior concubines gained favor, how officials whispered in the corridors of power, and how decisions were really made. She spent her years in Emperor Taizong's court, not just serving, but studying human nature, strategy, and the mechanics of influence. It was during this time she formed a connection that would change her life and Chinese history forever. She developed a relationship with the crown prince, Li Zi, the emperor's own son, when Emperor Taizong passed away. Tradition dictated that all his childless concubines had to leave the palace and live out their days in a Buddhist monastery. So, Wu Zetian shaved her head and became a nun. For many, this would have been the end of the story, but not for Wu. Her connection with the new emperor, Li Zi, now known as Emperor Gaozong, was her lifeline. He was deeply in love with her and couldn't forget her. Against all courtly rules and tradition, he brought her back to the palace. This was a scandalous move, but it was just the beginning. Back in the palace, Wu Zetian wasn't the naive young girl anymore. She was a seasoned player. She quickly outmaneuvered her rivals, including the existing Empress Wang and consort Xiao, using her political savvy and Emperor Gaozong's unwavering devotion. She solidified her position. By the year 655, she had achieved the unthinkable. Emperor Gaozong deposed his empress and made Wu Zetian his new empress consort. She was no longer just a favorite. She was the most powerful woman in the empire. As empress, Wu Zetian wasn't content to simply be a figure. She became the emperor's most trusted advisor. Emperor Gaozong suffered from poor health, often experiencing dizziness and strokes that left him unable to manage state affairs. This was Wu Zetian's moment. She stepped in, first assisting him, then taking on more and more responsibilities. She sat behind a screen during court audiences, listening to the ministers and advising the emperor. Soon, her voice became as powerful as his. They were known as the two sages, ruling China together. But as the emperor's health declined, the power balance shifted decisively in her favor. She was no longer ruling from behind the curtain. She was ruling. This was the critical transition from empress consort to the de facto ruler of the Temsi dynasty, setting the stage for her to eventually claim the title of emperor herself. What an incredible rise, right? From a fifth-rank concubine to the power behind the throne. But this is just the first act of her story. What happens next? Imagine stepping back in time to an era where a woman ruling an empire was not just unheard of, but defied the very order of the world. This is the story of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in China's long history. Her journey to the Dragon Throne is a gripping tale of ambition, intelligence, and sheer will. But how did she manage to hold on to power in a world designed to reject her? Wu Zetian wasn't just a figure. She was a master politician. She understood that to rule effectively, she needed to bring real change. She initiated significant reforms, streamlining the government and cutting down on corruption. One of her most brilliant moves was overhauling the Imperial examination system. Before her, high positions were often reserved for the aristocracy. Wu Zetian opened the doors to men of talent, regardless of their family background. This flooded her court with brilliant scholars and capable administrators who were loyal to her, not to the old noble families. She also invested heavily in agriculture and infrastructure, strengthening the empire's foundation and improving the lives of ordinary people. In many ways, her reign was a golden age of stability and progress. But there's a darker side to this story. Power, especially for a woman in ancient China, was a precarious thing. Wu Zetian knew that every smile could hide a dagger. The court was a viper's nest of conspiracies, with powerful clans and resentful officials constantly plotting her downfall. They spread vicious rumors about her, painting her as a cruel and immoral tyrant. To survive, she had to be more ruthless than her enemies. And that's where her reign takes a chilling turn. To secure her throne, Wu Zetian established one of the most feared secret police forces in history. Her network of spies was everywhere, listening in the shadows of the palace, in the tea houses, and on the streets. She encouraged people to inform on one another, even installing copper boxes in the capital where anonymous accusations could be dropped. Fear became her most potent weapon. A single wrong word, a whispered complaint, or even a hint of disloyalty could lead to arrest, torture, and execution. The line between a genuine threat and a personal rival became terrifyingly blurred. The atmosphere in her court was thick with paranoia. Officials would say their goodbyes to their families each morning, never certain if they would return home in the evening. Trust was a luxury no one could afford. Some of the tales of her cruelty are truly shocking. She is said to have eliminated her own family members, including sons and grandchildren, who she perceived as threats to her power. These stories, whether entirely true or exaggerated by her enemies, cemented her reputation as a ruler who would stop at nothing to maintain control. The palace, once a symbol of celestial harmony, became a gilded cage of suspicion and terror. So, how should we remember Wu Zetian? Was she a visionary leader who broke through the ultimate glass ceiling and ushered in an era of prosperity? Or was she a paranoid despot who ruled through fear and bloodshed? The truth, as it often is, lies somewhere in between. She was a complex product of her team. Brilliant woman, forced to adopt brutal methods to survive in a man-s world. Her policies strengthened China and laid the groundwork for the future glory of the Temps dynasty. Yet, the human cost of her reign was undeniably high. Her story forces us to ask difficult questions about power, gender, and morality. Can a ruler be both great and terrible? Is ruthlessness a necessary evil for a leader breaking new ground? Wu Zetian's legacy is a testament to the fact that history is rarely black and white. She was a reformer, a tyrant, a genius, and a monster, all rolled into one. Her reign is a powerful, and at times terrifying, reminder of what one woman can achieve when she dares to seize power for herself. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live in a place of ultimate luxury? Silken robes, endless feasts, beautiful music filling the air, and servants to cater to your every whim. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Well, for some men throughout history, this was their reality. They lived inside the opulent walls of a harem. But what if I told you this gilded cage was less of a paradise and more of a beautiful, terrifying prison? Let's pull back the velvet curtain and look past the glitter and gold. On the surface, life inside this exclusive world was breathtaking. The men were adorned in the finest clothing, their bodies draped in exquisite fabrics and jewels. They feasted on delicacies from around the world, flavors most people could only dream of. Their rooms were not just rooms, they were works of art, decorated with intricate carvings, plush carpets, and priceless treasures. Every day, the halls echoed with the enchanting sounds of music and the graceful movements of dancers. From the outside, it was a picture of pure indulgence and bliss, but this beautiful illusion masked a dark and suffocating truth. The first and most brutal reality was the complete loss of freedom. These men were not guests. They were possessions. They could not leave the palace walls. The world outside, the world they once knew, was forever gone. Imagine waking up every day, seeing the sun rise over a city you can never walk in again, hearing the sounds of a life you can no longer be a part of. The golden bars of their cage were still bars, and the confinement was absolute. Friendship, love, trustees, fundamental human connections were twisted into dangerous games. How could you form a real relationship when every person around you was a potential rival? Every conversation was a performance. Every shared glance a calculation. Servants weren't just there to help. They were spies, their ears open to catch any whisper of dissent or forbidden affection. Guards weren't just for protection. They were a constant, looming presence, their eyes tracking every single movement, day and night. The sense of isolation must have been profound, to be surrounded by so many people, yet to be utterly alone. And then there was the fear, a constant, gnawing fear that lived in the shadow of all that beauty. Life was precariously balanced on the whims of their ruler. A single wrong word, a misplaced look, or an innocent mistake could have devastating consequences. Punishment wasn't a slap on the wrist. It could mean public humiliation, brutal beatings, or being cast out into a world where you had no skills and no name. The ultimate price, of course, was death. Displeasing the ruler could mean you simply disappeared, erased from the palace as if you never existed. The most terrifying part was the instability of it all. Favor was a fickle and fleeting thing. One day, a man could be the center of attention, showered with gifts and honor, believing he had finally secured his position. He might feel a flicker of hope, a moment of security, but that could all change in an instant. The very next day, a new favorite could emerge, and yesterday's star would be cast into the shadows, forgotten, or worse. This psychological torment, the endless cycle of rising and falling, of hope and despair, was perhaps the cruelest torture of all. So, while the stories and paintings might depict a life of sensual pleasure and ease, the reality was a nightmare dressed as a daydream. It was a world where beauty and fear were two sides of the same golden coin, where every luxury came at the cost of one's soul, and where the most beautiful room in the palace could also be the loneliest, most dangerous place on earth. It's a powerful reminder that true wealth is not in what you have, but in the freedom to be who you are. Thanks so much for watching and exploring this. When you think of an emperor's court, you might picture beautiful women vying for his attention. But what about when the emperor is a woman? Let's travel back to Temp's dynasty China and explore the fascinating world of Wu Zetian, the only woman to ever rule as emperor in her own right. Her court wasn't filled with concubines. Instead, she had male companions. And the process to select them was just as rigorous, if not more so, than any imperial harem selection. First, let's get one thing straight. This wasn't just about picking handsome faces, although that was certainly a part of it. The selection process was a sophisticated system designed to find men who were the complete package: attractive, intelligent, and above all, obedient. Let us break down why each of these qualities was so crucial for anyone hoping to enter the Empress's inner circle. Physical beauty was non-negotiable. In the imperial court, appearance was everything. It was a direct reflection of status, power, and prestige. For Wu Zetian, being surrounded by handsome, well-groomed men was a visual statement of her own authority and good taste. These men were, in a way, living, breathing symbols of her imperial splendor. Officials were tasked with searching the empire for men with striking features, good posture, and an overall charismatic presence. It was a serious business. A candidate's looks could literally be his ticket into the Forbidden City. But looks alone wouldn't get you very far. Wu Zetian was a formidable intellectual. She was a skilled politician, a patron of the arts, and an astute scholar. She craved mental stimulation and couldn't stand being bored. Therefore, her companions had to be more than just pretty decorations. They needed to have talent. Many of the men selected were accomplished poets, able to compose verses on the spot to please the Empress. Others were gifted musicians who could play the zither or flute to create a soothing atmosphere. Scholars were also highly valued. Wu Zetian enjoyed sharp, witty conversation and deep philosophical discussions. She wanted companions who could challenge her, engage her mind, and keep her intellectually entertained. Imagine the pressure. You had to be charming, but also smart enough to hold your own in a debate with the most powerful person in the empire. Now we get to the most important quality of all. The one that could make or break a candidate, regardless of his looks or intellect. Loyalty. Wu Zetian's reign was groundbreaking, but it was also filled with political intrigue, assassination plots, and betrayals. She had fought tooth and nail to get to the throne, and she fought just as hard to keep it. She was constantly on guard against those who might want to usurp her power. So, when it came to the men she kept closest to her, absolute, unwavering loyalty was paramount. This wasn't something you could fake. Any man entering her service was thoroughly vetted. Their backgrounds were scrutinized, their families investigated, and once they were in, they were watched constantly. The slightest hint of disloyalty, the quietest whisper of betrayal, or even a suspected connection to one of her political rivals, was enough to get you removed. And removed in the imperial court could mean anything from simple banishment to a much more permanent and terrifying fate. For these men, their very lives depended on proving their complete and utter devotion to the Empress. They had to be her eyes and ears, her confidants, and her servants, all while walking a tightrope of political danger. So, the next time you hear about Wu Zetian, remember that her court was a complex and demanding environment. The men who served her were a unique blend of model, artist, and bodyguard, chosen through a strict process that valued beauty, brains, and an unshakable sense of loyalty. Their story offers a unique glimpse into the life and mind of one of history's most powerful and intriguing rulers. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.